So the next topic came up, pesticide certification training and some new requirements that are being placed on Missouri from the federal level. And they are going to have an impact on those of you involved in crop production. So we invited our friends from the Department of Agriculture to join us, and we had two of the very best. I think between Paul and Don, almost 5 decades of experience at the Department of Agriculture. So a tremendous amount of quality that we have here today in terms of their presentation. They're both great friends of agriculture. We work with them on a regular basis. I will tell you, we look at the State Department of Agriculture and the issues that we've dealt with in agriculture, it seems like they've been lopsided going to Paul's division, which is the Plant Industries Division. He's the director of the Plant Industries Division. So for about the last 3 years, it seems like the really, really tough issues have landed in Paul's lap, and he does a wonderful job. And Dawn Hall is here with him today. And she's the administrator of the the Pesticide Program Administrator. So we've asked them to talk about these new requirements that are coming to Missouri that are going to be placed on us. And so, Paul, are you going to go first, or Don? Don? Okay. So Don's going to come up and give the presentation, and we'll have both of them here to answer any questions. But if you would, please help me welcome both Don and Paul.
Can y'all hear me back there okay? In the back, yes? Okay. I know this isn't the most exciting topic, but I wanted to let you know, as regulators, that there are some changes that have been brought about from EPA that we are going to have to comply with. So before I get started, I just wanted to kind of poll the audience to see, show of hands, how many commercial applicators do we have in the room? Anybody? Okay. How about private applicators? Do we have any private applicators? Okay. So you'll have to bear with me. This presentation, we've been making this presentation to different groups that are affected by the new rules. So I do have some things in here that maybe aren't pertinent for other people like commercial applicators. We don't have any in the room. I'm going to run through those changes as well, just to give you perspective of the magnitude of what we've been tasked with at the Department of Agriculture that will affect each and every one of you that have an applicator license here with us in Missouri, okay? So this is the certification and training rule. EPA has revised this rule, and I will tell you first and foremost, it is an unfunded mandate. So we are expected to comply with this without being provided any sort of monetarily compensation to do so. So we are up against the wall to try to figure out how we are going to do this, all right? I'm just going to cover briefly the major changes. Now keep in mind in my presentation today, this doesn't cover all the nuts and bolts, but this is the major things that we're going to be impacted by, okay? So I'm just going to run through them. The first is there's going to be increased competency standards of certified applicators of restricted use pesticides. We'll go into more detail about each of these. This is just kind of a broad umbrella of the major changes. There's also going to be additional categories of certification for commercial, non-commercial, public, and private applicators that will have to be added in addition to our existing categories, okay? Also, we have to provide additional protection for non-certified applicators using restricted use pesticides under the direct supervision of a certified applicator through pesticide safety training and setting additional standards for supervision. So this probably affects most everybody in this room. If you have folks that work for you that don't have a license or working under the direct supervision of your license, So this is going to be a huge impact as well. Also, they've established a minimum age requirement, which isn't a huge obstacle for us, which is 18, because we already have that in our regulations now. So fortunately for us, that's one small takeaway that we won't have to modify. There's also new record-keeping requirements for pesticide use, as well as dealers that sell restricted use pesticides. So as I mentioned, we identified there's not any commercial applicators in the room, but I just do want to run through these just to give you some perspective. Just to start out, I know a lot of folks, everyone gets a use act, but you know, it's not that, while we expect you to know it, I just wanted to run through some definitions so when I'm talking about terminology, folks kind of have an idea, a little better idea of what we're talking about. So in Missouri, commercial and non-commercial applicators and public operators are equivalent to EPA's commercial applicator definitions, okay? So we've just kind of provided some definitions to give you perspective what we're talking about when we use the terminology commercial applicator. That's basically an applicator that's spraying either a general use pesticide or a restricted use pesticide. It's any pesticide on the lands of another in exchange for a fee. So they're going out there, whether it's lawn care, whether it's a co-op, etc., and those folks will be considered a commercial applicator by definition. A non-commercial applicator are individuals who use or supervise the use of restricted use pesticides on lands that are rented or owned by their employers. We think of these folks, we think of botanical gardens, golf courses, those types of folks is who we're talking about when we talk about non-commercial applicators. Public operators, these are the folks that use restricted use pesticides during the course of their government employment. MoDOT is probably the biggest group of public operators that we have. At the Department of Agriculture, Conservation would fall within that as well. So again, just to give you some background perspective information of what it is that we're talking about here. Commercial applicator numbers. So just to tell you how many folks are affected just in the commercial applicator category, we've provided some data as of July 1st. We've got a little less than 8,000 commercial applicators that are going to be affected by these changes. So I mentioned earlier about additional categories of certification. So in addition to the 14 that we have, we also have to add aerial, soil fumigation, non-soil fumigation, and a predator control category. So there's going to be 4 additional categories. Now, I know a lot of people are probably wondering what this is going to cost to you all as private applicators, and I can't give you an exact number because we rely on our partner, University of Extension, who puts on the training programs. They're also going to be tasked with being able to develop new study manuals also for new categories. So there will be a cost associated with that. Also for recertification in these categories. You know, you guys go to a recertification program, you go to your extension office, commercial applicators go to a recertification as well. So if you have someone that's certified in an aerial category, you know, they're going to have to identify a speaker of who's going to fulfill that role to be able to provide that recertification for those folks. There's going to be a cost associated with that, but I can't tell you exactly what that cost is going to be. Commercial applicators, so the general standards of competency that are set forth by EPA, they give us the rules and they say these are the standards of competency. When you have certification and recertification, this is what the topics have to cover. We then work with the University of Extension. They develop the program, the recertification program, and we work with them to make sure that all those boxes are checked. So on the commercial side, the standards of competency are being elevated on the commercial side from 8 to 10. That's for the core examination. Then you also have competency for the categories will also have to be updated. There are new requirements for direct supervision. I mentioned earlier about being 18 years of age. That's not a huge obstacle for us. Non-certified applicators is another huge area that commercial applicators are also affected by. So there's new training requirements for non-certified applicators that commercial applicators are going to have to adhere to. New record-keeping requirements for restricted use pesticide use. And then also they've set a maximum recertification period of 5 years, which again, we don't see that to be a huge obstacle for us to achieve. Now, private applicators, I probably don't need to go over this definition because you are all sitting here in this room. But just to give you some sort of perspective, those are individuals who use or supervise the use of a restricted use pesticide. So that would be yourself and anybody that's working under your license, under your direct supervision. You also are the ones that are producing an ag commodity. You can use your license for restricted use pesticide on someone else's property as long as you're not being compensated. If you're trading of services, that type of thing, that is permitted under a private applicator license. So this is a perspective on numbers of how many folks are affected in the private applicator category, which obviously is our largest category of pesticide applicators that we have. So as of July 1st, we had a little over 19,000 private applicators, certified private applicators. So the categories that I mentioned earlier, the aerial, soil, non-soil, fumigation, and predator control is across the board. So we also are going to have to add those categories for a private applicator license as well. Same situation, we're going to have study manuals that are going to have to be created. We're going to have speakers, that type of a thing. So keep in mind, you know, what you all do now going to your extension office, we don't know what that's going to look like. That's yet to be determined. But what I can tell you is going there watching a 2.5-hour video that you all do right now, it's going to get longer. There's no bones about it. We cannot continue to operate like this. And again, this is coming from EPA. They've either told us you have to comply or you're going to have to give up your state primacy, and EPA will be certifying pesticide applicators in the state of Missouri. So that's pretty much our two options on that. The general standards of competency, as you can see, they're more than doubling. So again, they have set those standards of what those are going to be. We're working with our partners at the University of Missouri for them to make that determination as to what that time frame is going to look like. Here today, I can't tell you, we've met with them, we've been in communication with them, we've shared all the information we have with these folks. We're waiting to hear back from them because everybody wants to know how is this going to affect me. I wish I had that information, but unfortunately I don't. So once they determine how much on the education side that's going to take, how much time that's going to take, what the cost is going to be to you all, then we'll be more than happy to share that information. The competency standards for all categories will have to be updated as well for private applicators. Now, if that's not bad enough, let me just tell you. So one of the major things for private applicators with the revision in this rule is the fact that we have to be able to demonstrate private applicator competency. Okay? So what that means, what it says in the rule, is we have to be able to have the ability, you all have to have the ability to read and comprehend a label. Okay? There's different ways to skin a cat, and we are looking at different options. It doesn't necessarily have to mean a test, but test is one option that's being evaluated. It could be some sort of a test as a part of a recertification program where you have like an exercise, a label exercise, where they go through and identify parts of the label, and maybe at the end there's a 10-question quiz about what it is you went over. So there's different ways, and we're definitely considering all of those options on the best way that we can accomplish that. That's going to be the most palatable to folks that we license, okay? But understand that that's pretty big, okay? Again, for private applicators, the maximum recertification period is 5 years. That won't be a problem for us on that. Now, this is the third category. This is the non-certified applicators. So this is just as the name says, you all are probably all familiar with that. The folks that work underneath you, maybe your mixers and loaders, maybe applicators, that type of a thing, working under your license that are out there making applications. So there's a lot of changes involved with non-certified applicators as well. Have to be 18. Again, you're seeing some duplication across the board on these three areas. They have to be able to prove competency to use the restricted use pesticides. One of the big things with the non-certified applicators is the training component. So EPA says that they have to have annual training on safe pesticide application to protect themselves and others from pesticide exposure. So they again have given the parameters, and there's over 25 that have to be adhered to be able to comply with this pesticide training, 25 topics. So again, this is something that's going to have to be done by applicators every year, okay? For those that work under the direct supervision, so this is pretty big. They also have stipulations on who can provide the training, so it can't just be anybody. It's got to be either a certified commercial applicator, a state designated trainer, or a person who has completed the trainer course under WPS. Okay.
Wouldn't it be just easier to have it certified?
That's certainly an option. I mean,
What was the question?
the question was, would it be easier just to have them certified? So we are here today to give you the big components of what the requirements are that have been set forth by EPA. And we as a state lead agency, pesticide applicator certification, have to figure out a way to meet this, or the program goes back to EPA. So, I mean, there's certainly different options. Let me just finish up here, just to kind of let you know what we have been working on. So, the department has formed a stakeholder group of which Farm Bureau does have a seat at the table. We've had 2 meetings thus far, and as you can imagine, when you get about 26 different agencies, representatives around a room, it's difficult to try to wrap your arms around it to see what's palatable for everybody. But we want everybody that's affected to have a seat at the table so that they can discuss their interest in what they can live with. So we're trying to figure out the option, our best option to comply with this unfunded mandate from EPA. Okay? So the other piece of this that I want to make sure to let you know is the Department of Agriculture has to submit a state plan by March 6th. This says March 4th, semantics, to be able to show how we're going to comply. This will require legislative changes. So, you know, we are going to have to go to the legislator to be able to make all of this work. This will require statutory rule changes to the Use Act. So again, once we know what direction we're headed, you know, what our best option is going to be for all of these folks, you know, then we are planning to go to the legislator, you know, because we have to have their support. And then we will present our plan to EPA. They will have 2 years to approve or reject it, and then we will be working under our old plan during that time. So that's kind of a lot of information that I've just thrown out there, but I wanted to make sure that you all are aware of what's going on over in the department. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to try to tell you. We are in Region 7 with EPA, so the EPA is broken down by region. So we have spoke to higher ups within our region, which consists of Arkansas, Kansas, Missouri, and Iowa. And we've reached out to them. The problem is different states have different programs. I mean, some are more advanced as far as their education component than others, and so it's not an apples to apples comparison. We have, believe me, we have looked at several different options. I don't know that that's going to be real viable, because yeah, I understand what you're saying. It seems like if you've got 50 states doing the same thing, it seems like you're kind of being repetitive.
Are you saying that the minimum requirements by some states are greater than those of the EPA?
No, what I'm saying is, so Missouri is one of the very few states left that where private applicators don't take an examination. Other states around us, I mean, I think we're one of 4 or 5 that are left in the United States where private applicators don't take examinations. So what we have to move up to be able to comply with this unfunded mandate